The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, with its set of Sustainable Development Goals, was adopted by the United Nations member states during the UN Summit in September 2015. The 2030 Agenda came into effect on the 1st of January 2016, upon the expiration of the Millennium Development Goals. It will run for the next 15 years and apply to every country. We start a new chapter as countries embark on a journey of implementing the SDGs. The 2030 Agenda commits national stakeholders to work together to promote sustained and inclusive economic growth, social development, and environmental protection for everyone to benefit from, including women, children, elderly, youth, and future generations.
Thank you. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Fernanda Tavares, and I'm the Director of the Ministry of Planning in X area. I'm very happy to be here today, and I wish to thank the organizers for the invitation and the interest in X area's approach to mainstreaming the 2030 Agenda. I will gladly answer any questions you may have and share our experience. Yes, please.
Thank you, Ms. Tavares. I'd like to say that we are extremely interested in learning about your experience. Thank you for accepting to share it. Could you perhaps start with your first steps? How did you kick off the process of mainstreaming the SDGs in your country?
This agenda requires everyone to contribute. We therefore started off the process by convening a multi-stakeholder dialogue. 3 challenges had to be addressed from the outset. Whom should we involve? What is their level of awareness and how can we increase it? Finally, how do we maximize opportunities around this gathering of key actors? Concretely, we held a 2-day national SDG workshop, attended by some 50 colleagues from line ministries and 30 civil society representatives. As a result of the workshop, we agreed to map the SDGs against our current midterm development plan and 10 sectoral strategies. It was agreed that the mapping exercise was to be followed by a participatory priority setting.
How did you choose your 30 civil society representatives? Was this level of engagement with non-state stakeholders sufficient?
Well, in this workshop, we could only accommodate 30 seats for NGOs since we wanted to keep the meeting manageable. We selected those NGOs and associations that represented key vulnerable groups and had a strong track record in advocacy, citizen engagement, or social service provision. We also invited several business associations and the Chamber of Commerce. We believe that the private sector has a key role to play in SDG implementation. However, we were quite aware that this level of engagement was not sufficient, so we didn't stop there. In parallel, we started working on raising broader awareness about the SDGs and strengthening engagement of different stakeholders. For kids, we distributed SDG publications at primary schools. We used slogans and songs for youth and tried to reach out through mobile applications. It is important to engage with young people. They have great potential as active citizens. We are considering replicating the EU reporting initiative that has been running successfully in several countries. Young people can provide their feedback using their cell phones. This in turn can be of great help in collecting data and monitoring progress on the SDGs. We also reached out to the general public and elderly people through radio, TV, and supermarket-based campaigns. We have also revisited the composition of our National Sustainable Development Council. It now includes the representatives of vulnerable groups and private sector. The Council's mission has been rewritten. Its focus now goes beyond the environmental dimension and covers social and economic issues.
What do you mean by mapping the SDGs?
We have compared the SDG targets against the existing targets in the national plan, sectoral strategies, and relevant legal frameworks. Each target was analyzed in terms of its relevance using 2 criteria: our domestic policies and our global responsibilities. We saw that our plan had several gaps, some due to low relevance in our realities, and others, although areas of critical importance, due to a low level of local capacities.
Why did you start the process in 2015?
For us, this year was also marked by the expiration of our previous 5-year National Development Plan. Therefore, we had to develop a new midterm plan for 2016-2020. We decided that we needed a new long-term vision to guide the plan preparation. We seized the opportunity and developed a new vision and a new plan, drawing on the adopted SDGs as the main reference framework.
You mentioned a priority setting exercise. There are concerns that countries will do cherry picking, diluting global responsibility. What is your take on this?
There is no doubt that all SDGs are equally important and universally applicable. They were, however, defined as global and aspirational, while each country faces its specific challenges on the path to sustainable development. To account for our specificity, we had to localize these global goals by setting our own national targets reflecting local priorities and circumstances. The localized SDGs targets have become part of our new vision up till 2030 and the Midterm Development Plan. The Midterm Plan is structured around 4 national priority pillars, covering all the SDGs and selected interventions aimed at helping to achieve the goals at the national level.
Concretely, how did you define these 4 priority pillars and related interventions?
We have launched a series of consultations with a broad range of stakeholders. Our objective was to hear their voices and start a political process for defining national priority pillars and required policies in alignment with the SDG framework. Those participating including sectoral ministries, local governments, academia, civil society, private sector, and religious and cultural organizations. The Reformed National Sustainable Development Council supported this process. First, 4 criteria have been identified: urgency, biggest gap, availability of resources, and systemic effect. Second, stakeholders have provided their feedback by using the defined criteria and the SDGs as a reference framework. The resulting priority pillars for the new SDG-based national vision and plan were approved by the Cabinet. They cover all the SDG areas. Then, another round of consultations was held by the Ministry of Planning and National Statistical Office. Sectoral ministries and local governments were consulted as part of the process of setting long-term and 5-year targets, defining national indicators, setting baselines, selecting policy interventions, and developing a monitoring and evaluation framework. While our vision outlines what we want to achieve by 2030, our midterm plan helps to translate it into actionable midterm strategies and targets.
What about your sectoral strategies? It is often being said that the SDGs are integrated and indivisible. How did you reflect this?
Intersectoral perspective is critical. It does not mean that it can fully replace sectoral policies. Nevertheless, it should be integrated into them. In some cases, a cluster approach to a number of closely related sectors makes sense. Sometimes, sectoral policies should be designed taking into account potential trade-offs and synergies with many other different sectors. Some of the policies pursue competing priorities. For example, food production and ecosystems compete for water use. Moreover, there are policies that require actions in other areas if they are to succeed. To promote integrated policies, we created an interministerial commission. Within this commission, 4 working groups were formed around 4 national priority pillars. As sectoral strategies start being updated in line with the new plan, line ministries are required to take into account linkages with other sectors and use the national pillars and targets as the guiding framework. These strategies are subsequently used by ministries to guide their annual programming and budget submissions. In addition, we started developing an integrated policy assessment tool that could be used for evaluating laws, strategies, policies, programs, and projects.
How about your climate-related commitments? Did you consider them when designing your new development plan?
Yes, my country made an intended nationally determined contribution submission right before the COP21. This was a critical commitment to be considered in our planning process. Indeed, climate cuts across all the areas of development to a greater or lesser extent. While there can be some trade offs to be considered, we saw a lot of opportunities for synergies. Take, for instance, agriculture, infrastructure, and urban planning. If designed correctly, they have the potential to provide both adaptation and mitigation.
Is coordination between ministries sufficient? What other incentives did you put in place to ensure sectoral policies do not undermine each other?
All ultimately depends on resource availability, allocation, and use. It is critical to ensure that the midterm expenditure framework is aligned with the development plan. This is where an effective coordination with the Ministry of Finance and its budget office comes into play. In my ministry, we also have an office dedicated to public investment projects. This office participates in the development of the expenditure frameworks and channels critical plan-related information. Well-aligned allocations then inform the development of annual results-based budgets structured around national priorities.
Strengthening the link between planning and budgeting is often a challenge. I was wondering, however, how else you ensure that the planned outcomes are achieved.
We have been working on the development of a comprehensive monitoring and evaluation system, trying to strengthen accountability and performance-based management. First, we do this by linking resource allocation with performance. Our evaluation office plays an advisory role in the budgeting process. It draws on findings from evaluations of critical public programs and policies and helps prioritize investments based on performance information. Timely data on key indicators coordinated by the National Statistical Office informs the Evaluation Office on progress towards budget results. In addition, we also try to enhance internal and external accountability of line ministries for the achievement of national priorities. We have recently passed a law to ensure that national development plans serve as the main reference point for performance. The President himself provides leadership through direct control and regular senior management meetings. Finally, we have made the performance information transparent. General public now has open access to regular updates of performance data coming from different ministries. This increases external accountability of the government vis-à-vis its citizens. All these measures help to ensure the government works towards defined results.
Does your plan include all 169 targets and 230 indicators agreed at the global level?
Our new plan contains around 120 out of 169 targets tailored to our realities, and we have more than 120 indicators, most of them aligned with global indicators.
All the measures described so far pertain primarily to central governments. We all know that the bulk of the SDG implementation should happen at the local level.
You are absolutely right. If we are to succeed, the SDGs need to be localized. Local development plans should reflect overall national and local priorities specific to each region. Our main objective here is to strengthen vertical policy coherence to support the achievement of localized SDGs and associated community indicators. If there are no more questions, allow me to conclude by thanking you for your interest. We would be happy to share our experience with those countries that find it relevant.